wanted to make a quick video about how I decide how long my expiration cycles should be when selling covered calls. In other words, how I decide whether I want to sell 7 DTEs, 30 DTEs, etc. So what most traders do is they just sort of pick one consistent expiration cycle. In other words, they always do 7 DTEs or they always do monthlies. And truth be told, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. However, what I like to do is vary my expiration cycle by taking into account the distance of the current price to the nearest support or resistance level. In other words, I'm going to leverage technical analysis to tell me how far out I should be selling my covered calls. So in front of you is a chart of Bitcoin, and since this breakout right over here a few weeks ago, I've been aggressively selling covered call premium. This trade went out to all of my Ko-Fi members in April, and I make all my trades public a few days after they're initially issued, so go check it out. And we've been making an absolute killing selling covered calls in the past couple of months, so check it out. So all throughout this rise after this breakout out of this channel, I've been selling weeklies. Okay, and by the way, you are looking at a chart of Bitcoin, but I've been using the IBIT ETF to sell covered calls on because it's highly liquid Bitcoin proxy. Am I still selling covered calls after this huge move? Yes, I am still in a position. However, with one crucial difference, which is that my most recent contract, instead of a weekly, I sold calls a whole month out. Actually, it was a little bit more than a month. I think it was a 35 DTE. So my most recent contracts expired right about at the tail end of this volume contraction here. And my thesis for this trade is that until we get a false breakout above this 2024 high, I don't think that we're going to see a big correction. In other words, a move above this significant high is basically necessary for this market to unwind a bit. So why did I decide to sell covered calls expiring in a month instead of a week? Well, the reason for that is there have been no significant pullbacks for several weeks now. And the longer that goes on, the greater the probability of a larger correction. So with that in mind, the nearest support level is this volume cluster right around $96,000, $95,000 on Bitcoin. And by selling covered calls an entire month out, this gives me two significant benefits. Okay, the first benefit is that my break-even point is much lower. When you sell covered calls further out, you get more premium. And when you get more premium, your break-even point is lower. The current price of IBIT is about $60, and I believe my break-even point is about $55.50. So I have a cushion of about 6 or 7% to the downside where I will still make money or break even. And when we are expecting a high probability of a pullback, having a large cushion is extremely important. The second benefit is that 1 month time frame gives the trade time to play out. And here's what I mean by that. Even if I'm wrong and Bitcoin's price starts heading lower, in that scenario, there's still plenty of time for price to make some sort of bounce off of this level, off of the support level. And even if I'm totally wrong about direction, there's still a really good chance that this support level will at least offer some temporary support. In other words, we might see a bounce and then we might see price just roll over. But here's the thing. From now until about 30 days from now, I could be getting out at a maximum profit or close to it. Whereas if I sold covered calls just 1 week out or 2 weeks out, those calls could be expiring literally at the low or at an intermediate low. Now, am I 100% this is gonna play out like this? No, absolutely not. But that extra bit of time is definitely going to play out in my favor more often than not. Back in April, it didn't matter what expiration cycle we chose. At this point, I was choosing weekly expiration cycles because I wanted to max out the premium. Obviously, if price keeps going up and has a lot of room to go up, you're gonna make a bit more premium by doing weekly covered calls instead of bi-weekly or monthly. Anyway, leave any questions in the comments and let me know what kind of video you want to see next. I'll see you in the next one.